Hey guys, Crypto Dad here again, and today I'm going to show you how to set up the Coldcard MK4 version. So let's get started. So I've had a lot of people ask me to do a Coldcard setup video, so I contacted the company and they were gracious enough to send one over for me in return for a review. Now, the Coldcard wallet is one of the most secure hardware wallets out there, and it has varying levels of configuration that you can go through to make it super secure. I'm going to try to go through all of its features so that you can make an intelligent decision over whether you want to purchase and use a Coldcard wallet. And as I mentioned, there are varying levels of security that you can add. The most basic way of using the Coldcard is by plugging the device into your computer with a USB cable in conjunction with Sparrow Bitcoin wallet. For the more security-minded, you can use the Electrum Bitcoin wallet. And when you use the Electrum Bitcoin wallet in conjunction with the Coldcard, you'll use a micro SD card for air-gapped signing of transactions. There's also another way to do air-gapped transactions using the Nunchuck wallet on your phone, and the way that you use your Coldcard with Nunchuck wallet is through the NFC signal. So let's talk a little bit about the security of the hardware device itself. It has a dual secure element. It has verifiable source code, and as I mentioned earlier, it has a true air-gapped solution. So let's get started with the setup. Now, as I mentioned, there are several layers of security that you can or cannot implement when using this device, and that holds true for the setup as well. There are a lot of security-minded people that want to ensure that it's not connected to the internet in any way or form during the setup. So you'll see people using a USB charging cable connected to a battery. I'm not going to go that route. I'm just going to use a charging brick over here. And I'm confident that the charging brick is not connected to the internet in any way. But if you want to go full throttle, you could get yourself a little battery charged USB cable if you'd like to keep it completely disconnected. And so we'll go ahead and get started with the unboxing. All right, so you'll notice that it comes sealed in a tamper-proof bag, and it has a serial number on the outside, and you're going to want to make sure that it matches the one on the device on the inside. So let's go ahead and open it up. All right, so this is what's in the box. We've got a couple of little stickers here, and we have our backup card with some warnings on here. And this is where we're going to store our security information for the card. So you're going to have a device pin that's in two parts and some anti-phishing code words that you'll need to record, and then you're going to get a list of mnemonic words. This is the backup of the private key. This is very important. You don't want anyone to find this. Anyone that finds this can restore these words to their own wallet and transfer your funds. So make sure that you keep this in a very safe place. Also, if you should lose this device or damage it or get it stolen or anything like that, you'll be able to use your backup to restore all of your wallets. So very important. Now, I found this one a little bit small. I'm going to use this card, which has a little more room on it. You can also use a piece of paper if you want to. Just make sure that you put that paper in a safe place. Also, there are other ways that you can back up your seed phrase, such as the Elipal seed phrase steel, where it's much more durable, waterproof and fireproof and fade proof. There's also the crypto tag, which is another solution for backing up your seed phrase on metal. So the level of security mindedness is completely up to you how you want to store your seed phrase. It also has this protective case on the front, dust cover. So it sort of looks like a little calculator. It's pretty unassuming. As I mentioned, this USB cable is connected to a charging brick that I have next to me. This is a USB-C connector. I'll go ahead and plug it in. There's some terms of use here. Now you can use these numbers as your directionals. They've got arrows on them. So I'll just scroll down. All right, and then you press this OK button down here to accept the terms. And here's where we get that serial number displaying on the device. You'll want to confirm that it's the same as your outer packaging. It's another fail-safe check. They mention if you've noticed any tampering, you can take pictures and report to the company. And once we've done that confirmation, I'll go ahead and click the check mark. Now, before I get started on the setup, I'm just going to go into the settings and double check what my firmware version is. All right, it says show version here. So it's a good idea to double check your firmware version to make sure you're running the latest version. All right, and now we can go over here to Docs and check the firmware. Okay, and it looks like there is some new firmware for the MK4. It's brand new. I'll go ahead and make sure I've got the latest firmware here. I'll just drop this in my downloads folder. So we're going to copy that firmware file over onto an SD card. Before I do that, I'll just show you quickly. There is an advanced way of cryptographically verifying this firmware update before you run it. And if you wish to skip that part, you can just skip to the next chapter in the video. But I will go through this for Windows since I'm on a Windows version. If you scroll down here, there's some Windows instructions. Now, I already have GPG for Windows installed on my computer, but it's a pretty straightforward installation. So the first thing we can do is verify the hash file. We can just open this up, and then these are the hashes. Now, there are many ways to check hashes. You can do it from the command line. I have a little piece of software that I like to use, MD5 hash checker. All I have to do is browse over to the file that I just downloaded and open it up, and it's going to generate all of the hashes. And then I just want to compare it. These are SHA-256, so I have a SHA-256 here. We just want to make sure that we've got the right one that we just downloaded. This one here. This is the one that I just downloaded. I can verify it over here. That's the same file number. Here's the hash. Copy that into my clipboard. And I can paste it in here to verify, right? I could also eyeball it, but I find it much easier to just paste it in there. So we verified the hash. That's the first step. All right, now we're going to need to save this signature file. We'll do a save link as, and we want to change this to an ASC extension. Then we'll do the same thing with this public key here. We'll do a save link as, and we want to make sure this is an ASC file too. All right. All right, now we'll go ahead and launch our Cleopatra, which is part of the GPG for Windows. First thing we'll do is import that public key, or what we might call the developer signing key. So we simply click import here, and I want to do this lookup first. We'll do that, and I'll go ahead and certify this. If you want to get deep into it, you can actually contact them, get a business card or a phone call to certify that, but I'll go ahead and certify, and there it is, Peter D. Gray, right? Go ahead and certify that, and it's ready to go. Now all we have to do is double check that signature. We can go to Decrypt Verify. We'll click on the signature and click Open. And it's going to give us a little confirmation that that signature file was cryptographically signed by the developers, right? We can save or discard this. It doesn't really matter. All right, so I know that's a little tricky. I get it. Feel free to skip that part if you want to. Now that we've verified that that firmware update file is good and correct and approved by the developers, let's go ahead and copy it over to our SD card. So I have a little SD card here. You can get these on Amazon. They're not very expensive. I have a little SD card reader here. several different brands that you can get. The device might have issues reading the file on this card, so you want to make sure that you format it in FAT32. I've got this here. Go ahead and put that in your computer. All right, now I've used this secure card reader before, but let's just go ahead and format it so that it's blank. And as I mentioned, it should be FAT32. I think the default might be NTFS if you're on a Windows machine. So just make sure that you're doing it FAT32. So it'll be readable by the device. We'll go ahead and start that up. All right, now we've got a nice blank drive. We can go over to downloads where we downloaded the firmware updater. And we'll just copy it over to our J drive. Your drive letter might be different. And there we go. All right, and now we're ready to update our firmware. You can do an eject if you want to. Now it's safe to remove. Just grab your reader, take out your little SD card. We're ready to roll. All right, let's go ahead and insert the card in here. You'll notice that they'll only go in one way, and you'll hear it click a little bit when it goes in. All right, now I can go ahead and update the firmware. All right, and now you'll just navigate down to From Micro SD, hit the check. All right, it detects there's only one firmware file on that, so we'll click the check. All right, there it is. That's the one that we just downloaded and put on the SD card. We'll hit the check again, and we'll confirm that that's the firmware that we want to install. All right, looking good. We can go ahead and eject this. And then let's go down again and double check to Advanced Tools. Go down here to Firmware and Show Version. And now we're running the latest version of the firmware. Good stuff, right? We can X out of this. Go back to the main screen. And now we're ready to begin our setup. I'll go ahead and use the provided card for writing down my PIN. You should use a different PIN than anything you've used before. Don't use your ATM PIN or your kid's birthday, of course. If you think you can remember it, that's great, but it's always better to have it written down in case you forget it later. A year or two down the road, you may forget the one you made up on the fly, so it's always a good idea to have it written down and stored in a safe location. So we'll start off by hitting the check mark. Now you want to be very careful about this because there is no way to recover a PIN once you've set it. Other hardware wallets, you can do hardware resets and restores, but this device will brick up if you try to enter the PIN incorrectly. I think you get 13 tries. So make sure that you don't lose this PIN. It's very important. I'm sure you could buy another device and restore so you wouldn't lose your crypto, but you would brick the device, and you don't want to have to spend money on buying a new device simply because you forgot your PIN, right? The recovery phrase is for emergencies only, so be very careful with entering this PIN. All right, so we'll go ahead and hit the check mark here, and they're going to warn us again about that PIN. Okay, so you're going to have to hit number 6 to prove that you read all of this. All right, and then we'll start with our PIN prefix. You can choose up to 6, and that would give you a 12-character PIN. I'll just choose 4, hit the check mark. All right, and then it's going to give you 2 words that you'll write down on your card so that when you use the device again and start entering that PIN, you'll see these 2 words. All right, once you have those words written down, you'll hit the check again. They want us to enter the rest of the PIN. Hit the check mark, and then they want us to confirm, so we'll do that. Okay, the prefix, the 2 words are the same, and then the rest of the PIN. Hit the check. All right, so we've successfully set the PIN. Now I'm going to generate new seed phrase. One of the reasons people really love this wallet is that it's completely disconnected from the internet when we generate these seed words, right? It's very randomized. You can look up all of the mechanics about how this works on their website. I'll put links down in the description below. This is completely offline seed generation with randomness. So it's a really good device for generating a secure seed phrase. And we'll go ahead and choose that option. All right, and they've got a default 24-word seed phrase. They've got a 12-word seed phrase, which is a little shorter and easier. It is sufficient, but more is always better, so people choose the 24, even though that's a little overkill. I won't make any judgment on that. I'll go ahead and stick with the default, which is 24. You also have these options of using a dice roll to add even more randomization. So if you're super security minded, you might want to try that out. Not for the faint of heart. I'll go ahead and use the default 24 word. I'll hit the check mark here, and then it's going to present those words to me on the screen, and I can scroll up or down. And as I mentioned, they're very important. I'm going to use this card. It's a little easier for me to write everything down. Also, make sure, no matter however you're doing this, if you've got numbers on your own piece of paper or you have a card like this, to make sure that the numbers on the device for your words are a match for the numbers over here, because the order of the words is very important. So don't just write down, in my case, I don't want to write down the first 12 words in this column because the numbers are staggered, right? I want to write down my list of words left to right, top to bottom, like a book, right? So make sure that you write all of those down. Make sure they're legible. Double check on your device to make sure that you've got all of these words written down carefully. All right, when you're finished writing down all of your words, you'll hit the check mark. And then it's going to give you a little quiz where it's going to ask you which word is which. So refer to your card, look at the words you wrote down on your card, and answer these questions. All right, then it'll ask you about a different word. All right, and after you've passed your little quiz, it's going to go ahead and initialize. Now you can enable or the NFC tap. You can do it now. I believe you can always do it later if you want as well. I'll go ahead and enable it because I would like to show you how that works. I'll go ahead and use the check for that. Got that done. They also have a little circuit breaker here if you wish to completely disable the NFC forever, but I'm not going to do that. Now, if you never want to use the USB port, you can disable that as well. I think you could probably re-enable it in the settings if you like. I will not disable the USB port. You can always change this later in the settings. All right, and now we're back at the main screen of the device. We can also add a passphrase if you want to add another layer of security. Passphrase is an advanced way to protect both your device and your seed phrase using a long, complicated passphrase that only you know. It does add a layer of complexity, and it's also dangerous if you're not very experienced. You could easily lose access to your crypto assets if you forget your passphrase. So don't do that unless you are fully confident in what you're doing. I'm not going to demonstrate that today. As I showed you before, we've got the advanced tools and the settings. If we want to go in there and enable or re-enable any of those things that we did before. All right, so we did a complete offline generation of a super secure seed phrase that's only stored on the device. So that's the initial setup of the Coldcard device. I hope you found this video informative and interesting. I'm going to do some follow-up videos that'll show you how to interface your Coldcard device with various wallets and different types of interfaces. So stay tuned for that. If you have any questions about anything I did, please throw them up in the comments and I'll do my best to get them answered. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you'd like to subscribe to my channel, I would appreciate it. When you subscribe, there's a little bell that you can click that will allow you to be alerted whenever I post new content. Once again, thanks for joining me and hope to see you again soon.